Why is the establishment attacking Facebook? Because from a sort of normal reading of the politics of Silicon Valley, people would think, well, Mark Zuckerberg is one of these leftist social media barons in Silicon Valley. He's part of the cartel. He's in the club, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is the nature of Facebook itself, and incidentally, Zuckerberg's commitment to free expression. Now, I realize there are going to be a bunch of people hearing that going, wait a minute. So, I know. Give me a minute. We'll get to it. So let's talk about the whistleblower. The whistleblower, whose name was Frances Haugen, who was a former Facebook product manager who worked on civic integrity issues, did a 60 Minutes interview where she pointed out, as we covered earlier this week in the podcast, that there are bad things to Facebook and Instagram, and leaked these to the Wall Street Journal. These were part of a sort of combined arms attack on Facebook because of Facebook's dominance. One of the points that they bring up over and over again is just how dominant in the social media market Facebook is, because if we don't consider YouTube to be a social media platform, which I don't think it is in the traditional sense, Facebook is by far the biggest, and probably is bigger than all of the others combined. And so they don't like this, because what that means is if you have 3 billion users, well, there's a fairly good chance that some of them will be right-wing. That's bad. Right-wingers need to be stopped. So basically, she's complaining that we have evidence from a variety of sources that hate speech, divisive political speech, and misinformation on Facebook and the family of apps are affecting societies around the world. It's like, well, sure. I mean, any amount of communication affects societies. That's the point of communication. Why would we talk if it wasn't going to have an effect?
Quite.
But anyway, moving on. She started at Facebook in 2019 after previously working for other tech giants like Google, Pinterest, and Yelp. And she had a testimony before a Senate subcommittee on consumer protection, product safety, and data security yesterday. And that makes me suspicious. I think it's the old almonds activated. Is she a plant? I mean, I don't know. But do I think that the internal politics of Silicon Valley are going to be ruthless because of the amount of money and influence involved? Of course I do. And you'd be a fool not to, in my opinion. But she said that she believes that Mark Zuckerberg never set out to make a hateful platform, because that's how Facebook is in this characterization. It's just hateful. I mean, most people are on there sharing pictures of their grandmothers, but no, it's a hateful platform. And that kind of pathologizing is important, because otherwise we don't have the narrative justification in order to take action against Facebook. But he has allowed choices to be made where the side effects of those choices are hateful, that hateful and polarizing content gets more distribution and more reach. So she had her Senate hearing, which was very interesting and reported well by TechCrunch. They say throughout the hearing, she makes it clear that she thinks Facebook's current algorithm, which rewards posts that generate meaningful social interactions, is dangerous. This was rolled out in 2018, with the newsfeed algorithm prioritizes interactions such as comments and likes from the people who Facebook thinks you're closest to, like friends and family. But she claims that the leaked documents show that this system yields unhealthy side effects on important slices of public content, such as politics and news. Obviously, this is all framed in the, it's right-wing misinformation, as if there isn't plenty of left-wing misinformation as well. But because Facebook isn't a one-sided, left-wing dominated platform, this means that it's a right-wing platform in their view. But we'll get to that in a minute. So she has some good suggestions. She points out that Facebook uses this user-based engagement ranking in which AI displays the content that it thinks will be most interesting to individual users. This means that content that elicits stronger reactions from users will be prioritized, boosting misinformation, toxicity, and violent content. And she thinks that, in fact, a chronological ranking would help mitigate these negative impacts. Now, I just want to be clear. All I've ever wanted from social media sites is just show me in chronological order that which I am subscribed to. I mean, it's not really much to ask for, is it?
No, not really.
No, but this kind of prioritizing of reactive content, again, not a right-wing thing particularly, a left-wing thing as well, is part of their attempt to increase your user engagement with the site, because in their interest they want to keep you on the site for as long as possible because it's their business, but it's not necessarily your business. It's not a bad suggestion on her part, but she had this 60 Minutes interview, and this has been well covered by the press, and that's something to make me suspicious, because there are lots of other whistleblowers who have come from within Facebook, and you may have seen them on Project Veritas, and they don't get 60 Minutes interviews. They don't get all this positive coverage. And so the fact that she does makes me very, very suspicious. But anyway, she says that after the 2020 election, or leading up to it, in fact, they had the Civic Integrity Committee in Facebook, which was dissolved after the 2020 election. So you can see that there they are engaging in what I guess you could call some sort of election manipulation or information manipulation regarding the election. And they implemented these safeguards to reduce misinformation, quote unquote, before the election, but after the election they turned off these safeguards, of course, to encourage user interaction. She thinks that is, quote, deeply problematic. She says, the thing I'm asking for is a move away from short-termism, which is what Facebook is run under today. It's being led by metrics and not people. With appropriate oversights and some of these constraints, it is possible that Facebook could actually be a much more profitable company 5 or 10 years down the road. If it wasn't so toxic, people wouldn't quit it. I think that's rather ironic, given that literally half the planet uses Facebook. So it doesn't really have a problem with people quitting Facebook. And I don't think that Facebook is nearly as toxic as perhaps some of the alternatives, like Twitter. But that's not the issue here, because the issue is that this is being used as a method to try and gain control of information distribution on Facebook. Now, that's not good if you are a person who thinks that you should be the one in charge of the information you distribute and how it gets distributed, because it's a social media platform, not a publisher. Anyway, so she wants Facebook run like Twitter, put in summary, and she even suggests that they have soft interventions like they do on Twitter and various other things, and they do have these on Facebook. You know, if you post something about COVID, they'll put up a little panel that says, you know, click here for COVID information, blah, blah, from our verified fact checkers. And what's interesting about this is she doesn't want Facebook broken up. She doesn't want Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp broken up, because that would reduce the influence of people who wish to reform these companies. And so what she's looking for is control over these companies. And the press loved it. If we can get to the next one, John. Independent here posting, you can see it. Facebook whistleblower, Hagen called 21st century hero by Senate as Zuckerberg told toxic time is up. So Zuckerberg, evil toxic, this woman, 21st century hero. Okay. I'm not a big fan of having to defend Zuckerberg, but unfortunately, that's going to be something we're going to have to talk about. This, of course, caused Facebook's stock to plummet, and Zuckerberg lost billions of dollars in value. But anyway, moving on. Bloomberg. Again, you've got to see how the press is reporting this. Left Mark Zuckerberg speechless. He wasn't at the hearing, so I mean, he didn't get a chance to respond. But anyway, the Bloomberg article informs us that she is someone who has an MBA from Harvard and is well versed in these algorithms, so she can't just be discredited. It's like, right, okay. But why her? Like, other people have come forward from Facebook who are also credentialed, but they don't get to be heard. Weird. But anyway, New York Times had a great take on this, and I like this particularly. If you can scroll down a little bit so you can see the headline. Facebook is weaker than we knew. That's very interesting. Speaking now in the language of strategy and power politics, how can Facebook the Titan be toppled is the implication from this article. But literally they say Facebook's in trouble. Not financial trouble or legal trouble, or even senators yelling at Mark Zuckerberg trouble. What I'm talking about is a kind of slow, steady decline that anyone who's ever seen a dying company up close can recognize. Notice they're trying to introduce a sort of pall over Facebook. You know, the most successful company in all of human history. No company has ever had as many customers as Facebook has had, and yet it's a dying company.
Yeah, and it's also an expression of the fact, maybe, that it's not accepted as part of the, shall we say, Silicon Valley intellectual vanguard anymore.
Exactly.
This is a seismic moment.
Yes.
For San Francisco.
And notice how, like, all of these, again, all of the major sort of power players when it comes to setting the intellectual tenure, like the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, New York Times, they've all formed ranks against Facebook and are now pouring fire into them using militaristic language. You know, they say it's a cloud of existential dread that hangs over an organization whose best days are behind it. And how do you know? Whose opinion is this?
That's almost come out of nowhere, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We've just made this up. We're just saying it. This is like, internet blood sports, but for Silicon Valley. But anyway, so the point is this momentum is clearly being astroturfed. We can go to the Wall Street Journal. This Facebook whistleblower's testimony builds momentum for tougher tech laws. So you can see how the sort of left-wing elite class in America are all rallying around, gathering the troops and saying, right, well, we've got to constantly start attacking Facebook now. And this is how it's done. Can't have been done by James O'Keefe or any, what I guess we'll call right-wing whistleblowers. Now it has to be done through left-wing means. But yeah, so they just pour onto this even more. And so this gives us some of the responses from the lawmakers. One said... Oh, no, sorry. So Facebook did actually give a response to this and said, one thing we agree on, it's time to create standard rules for the internet. Instead of expecting the industry to make societal decisions that belong to legislators, it's time for Congress to act. So Facebook aren't even necessarily resisting this. But so Senator John Thune, who's a Republican, said, I would simply say, let's get to work. We've got some things we can do here when talking about algorithm transparency. And Amy Klobuchar said, well, there are lobbyists around every single corner of this building that have been hired by the tech industry. Facebook and other big companies are throwing a bunch of money around this town and people listen to them. So they are all the entire structure is wide awake now and is talking about this. And so this whistleblower, I find it interesting how she's got a fundraiser that's been raised by Whistleblower Aid. Again, they didn't do this for any of the right-wing fundraisers, whistleblowers. No. None of this happened. It's all just for this particular one because of, I'm assuming, a series of connections and political alignments that she has. But 37 grand out of 100 grand they've raised so far. We need your support to make sure she's got the backup she needs as she stands up to speak the truth. Everyone appears to be on her side.
Yeah, and it's effectively her word against the entire Facebook corporation.
Yeah,
and the very fact that, well, everyone has pivoted to her side on what is at present completely arbitrary grounds is extremely revealing.
Yeah, because I mean, there's more than one way to read the leaked information that Facebook put out. Well, not they didn't put out, that she put out. Because I mean, for a quarter or so of women, your girls, Instagram is bad for them, but for 75%, it's either neutral or positive. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, throw those quarter under the bus or anything, but there are multiple ways of reading this, and it depends on how you're trying to, what result you're trying to get out of it. So the question is, why is she doing this? Now, it's probably not just money. She says that she's doing it because she lost a friend to misinformation. Now, this wasn't misinformation about Russia interfering with the elections. It wasn't misinformation gotten by any Democrat source. No, this was right-wing misinformation. All of this, you don't even hear the terms left-wing misinformation out of these people.
Of course not.
No, of course not. As if the left-wing has never said something untrue. But anyway, she claims that she doesn't hate Facebook. She loves Facebook and wants to save it. And saving it means giving her and her... I think Vanguard is the best term for it, control over Facebook's editorial policies. She says that a family friend was hired to help her with her daily tasks after she became ill, but their relationship deteriorated as he became obsessed with online forums touting conspiracy theories about dark forces manipulating politics. Not Koch brothers money or anything like that. No. Of course, it's George Soros money. As if the left wing and right wing don't have mirror image conspiracy theories at this point. But she says, it was a really important friendship, and then I lost him. The former friend has apparently fell into, what was it she said? QAnon and white nationalism. QAnon and white nationalism are both banned from Facebook. So I don't know how he fell into this. But I mean, maybe it was before it was banned, I suppose.
When was it banned?
Sorry, the world of the occult and white nationalism, she says, yeah. It was a couple of years ago. It was not recent that this was banned. At least not recent on a sort of political commentary timeline. But anyway, and so you can see this feeding into the left-wing media ecosphere. If we can go to the next one, see Salon.com, Amanda Marcotte, Facebook whistleblower exposes dark reality. Right-wing disinformation is popular and profitable. And this is part of an ongoing media narrative that has been spun around Facebook because, again, Facebook has been remarkably lenient with the kind of content that it allows, as in conservatives are allowed to use Facebook. That's the problem that they have. The mere fact that disinfo is out there already circulating is in itself a form of social permission. If other people are lying to advance their political goals, Facebook users can believe that it's okay to engage with and promote the lie as well. Or it could be that they don't believe their lies and they just have different interpretations of the same events. But anyway, this, again, like I was saying, if you go to the next one, John, is part of a very long and storied history of them complaining that right-wing people are doing very well on Facebook, because Facebook is full of boomers. Boomers tend to be more conservative than millennials and Generation Z. And this one's from March 2021, where they're complaining that the right-wing misinformation on Facebook is more engaging than its left-wing counterpart. Research finds.
It's funny that they think the engagement has less to do with whether there might actually be substance to why they're being attracted to certain ideas, and more to do with Facebook's algorithm.
Yeah. But yes, it's basically an admission that the left can't meme. From research.
Yeah.
And there's, sorry, I realise we're running a bit low on time. Let's carry on. So, Vanity Fair, Facebook is now the social media home of the right. They wish, you absolutely wish that was the case. But this is because basically Mark Zuckerberg didn't want to be the police of information online. This was from 2020, this one. Anyway, so what this was about is that on Twitter, Jack Dorsey had decided to start labeling Trump's most dangerous posts as glorifying violence and fact-checking them, whereas Zuckerberg decided to go in the opposite direction, conceding that he is not the arbiter of free speech, and even going as far as to have a call with Trump on himself to talk about Facebook's stance. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but Mark Zuckerberg has done the morally correct thing here.
Yeah.
He's not the arbiter of free speech.
Yeah, and he's not acting in contempt of the US Constitution, which arguably Twitter does directly.
That's a great point. Moving on, the sort of popular viral trash sites like Mashable. Oh, Facebook is the right-wing social network now. The right-wing's just taken over Facebook. The transformation of Facebook is complete. So moving on from this, you can see that in 2020, Politico, again, the media narratives, they're constant. The right wing has a massive advantage on Facebook. Again, this just comes back to the left can't meme, and so they're upset by this. And this has been going on since 2018 at the very least, where you see Media Matters claiming that Facebook is a right-wing propaganda machine. Okay, but by that standard, every other social media network is a left-wing propaganda machine. And no one cares. They don't care because they're left-wingers, obviously. And so this basically drills down to why. Why is Facebook the right-wing propaganda machine? And it's because Mark Zuckerberg is actually better on free speech than most people would want to give him credit for. In 2019, he spoke at Georgetown University about the importance of protecting free expression, and he underscored his belief that giving everyone a voice empowers the powerless and pushes society to be better over time, and that's basically his core belief. And he does seem to have stood on this. The New York Times described him as, quote, defiant. We can go to the next one. Senator Warren accused him of, Elizabeth Warren accused him of being a disinformation for profit machine, which was a bit harsh, I think, all things considered. But yeah, anyway, so Zuckerberg has been saying this for quite some time, and he's got quite a good statement here. People having the power to express themselves at scale is a new kind of force in the world, a fifth estate alongside the other power structures of society. The journey towards greater progress requires confronting ideas that challenge us. And he's here today and that day because he believes that we must continue to stand for free expression. Now, that's a good point. The fifth estate alongside the other power structures of society. Because the fourth estate, the media, are clearly not happy about this.
No.
And that's what they're doing.
And ironically, you could actually say this is the closest thing to like a Habermasian platform for communicative discourse that there has ever been in cyberspace. And yet,
absolutely. It couldn't... like you couldn't make the point more clearly that this is the media being concerned that the power of their narratives is being challenged by grassroots use of the internet, and they hate it. And it's Facebook that is actually facilitating this, believe it or not. Now, again, that is not to say that Facebook hasn't censored or isn't guilty of doing this. As we know, that they deplatformed Tommy Robinson unjustly, I think, because of a lie. They deplatformed Alex Jones, which I don't really think was justified either, but probably more justified than Voldemort. And of course, they deplatformed Trump all in one day, and that still wasn't good enough according to the Carnegie Foundation. But so it's not to say that Facebook has not been guilty in its own way of doing this. But I don't think really this comes from Mark Zuckerberg's intuitions or motivations. It seems that this is because of outside pressure from, you can see that the media maelstrom operating around him. I mean, like, after Zuckerberg gave his 2019 defense of free speech, it was like, oh, Facebook and the free speech excuse, various articles like this at the time. And so it was like, right. But again, I really want to hammer this point home. Zuckerberg has actually defended free speech on many occasions and in many unpopular ways. And the one I keep coming back to is in 2018, where he didn't want to take Holocaust denial off of Facebook. Now, that's a remarkable hill to die on. Zuckerberg himself is Jewish, and so he, I guess, had a bit of leniency on this because, he was like, well, look, I'm Jewish and I don't think we should get rid of it. Because in his words, people have sincere convictions, whether they're right or wrong. And so he says, I think that I don't believe our platform should take things down because I think there are things that different people get wrong. He doesn't support Holocaust denial. He doesn't believe Holocaust denial, but he does think that people with sincere convictions should be allowed to say things that are wrong. Because then if the alternative, as much as you don't like it, is entering into this kind of scientific, technocratic, managerial frame of the internet where you're not even allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's awful.
Yeah.
He did end up caving on this a couple of years later, and eventually, because basically of all the pressure groups, I think, and essentially had to get rid of QAnon. It was in 2020 that got rid of QAnon and Holocaust denial and all of that sort of stuff. And so we end now, I guess, where we are now with Facebook basically being slowly but surely eaten up by left-wing activists and left-wing control. And so that means that the Daily Wire is probably going to see its reach limited substantially because that's their main concern. Outlets like the Daily Wire, Fox News are dominating Facebook because that's where the boomers are and that's what they want to see. It's not that Facebook is some sort of right-wing, propaganda platform. It's that it's the people using it make it what it is.
Yeah, and well, the longer the purge goes on, the more these right-wing fanatics, as they're being ostracised as, are going to mobilise on social media and be, well, shall we say, unfairly castigated again.
Yeah. And it's because of the left-wing intolerance to the existence of right-wing ideas. All they can do is pathologise them as being misinformation because they don't come to the same conclusions as left-wingers.
It's a heresy charge, in effect.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly it. It is a charge of heresy. That's exactly it.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can catch the full podcast at 1 p.m. every weekday UK time at lotuseaters.com. You can also sign up at lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, that's how we keep this whole operation running. And recently we've put up loads of great stuff, such as this interview with legendary comedian Steve Hughes, one of my personal favourite comedians, so it was a real honour to be able to meet him. But one thing that I didn't expect, that he would be such a deep thinker, and this podcast is genuinely like a meeting of minds in a way. He was right on my wavelength on a bunch of things and helped me actually connect a bunch of dots, but I'm not going to carry on and spoil it. We also, of course, have lots of interesting articles that have been written, such as this one by Josh about the dumbest country on earth. And for premium, for silver tier subscribers, we also include a link, so it's we have an audio reading of it from a chap called Jonathan, who has a very smooth voice that you will enjoy. And this is great because often I don't have time to read all of the articles that we put up, because we've put up a lot of regular content, and so this saves me the hassle of having to read it myself. So I really actually am very appreciative of this feature on a personal level. But we also do the Contemplations and Epochs, which are just interesting podcasts about interesting things. These are regular weekly podcasts. So this one is one of our writers, Josh, he's got a master's degree in psychology, talking about theories of intelligence and how they matter. And of course, we've got the Epochs, where myself and Bo, or in this case it was Josh and Bo, talking about the life of Sir Francis Drake. So that's 2 solid hours talking about England's most notorious adventurer. But we've also got lots and lots of other ones. This is number 21, so there's a good back catalogue there. And finally, we have our book clubs, and this is the part that I'm most proud of. Recently, we've done Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell, and
Reflections on a Ravaged Century by Robert Conquest.
Yeah, Robert Conquest is fantastic. Just if you want Western chauvinist historian, he's your man.
Anti-socialism.
Yes, in all forms, it's fantastic. And like I said, that's what keeps the podcast running. So if you want to become a member, thank you very much, and we think there's some great stuff you'll enjoy.